Marc LoPresti is joining me from Market Rebellion. I hope that drops to zero, Mark.
Yeah, I do, of course, for anybody that would be potentially at risk in that kind of a situation. We never want to see military escalation, although it certainly seems like Iran is preparing for an escalation according to the president's threats, stepping up their organized drills, naval drills in the Straits of Hormuz there. Oil, of course, reacting positively if you're long oil, and oil's been trading at a level that is below what is typically considered to be a sweet spot, certainly for the oil producers and the downstream players in that space. So interesting to see how that plays out. But Oliver, even when we did do that previous military action in Iran last year, the market was some volatility. It did sell off a little bit, but ultimately it sort of took that news in stride, as it has most geopolitical stuff, whether it's regarding Israel or Iran. The market seems pretty largely unfazed.
Yeah. Today also we were talking about the private credit companies getting hit, Blue Owl closing that fund, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's sector specific type of risks. They largely seem contained. I think most of the overall risk this market is trying to move through. That's my take, but there's a wall of worry for a reason. I just generally favor climbing over it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and I think any one of these individual factors taken on its own would not be giving us certainly the kind of spike that we see today in the VIX, up about 5% since when I last looked at it on the day. But I think all of these things taken collectively, along with, of course, tomorrow option expiration, expecting higher volumes and higher volatility. There's the possibility that we get the Supreme Court's decision on the president's tariff policies. Could potentially happen tomorrow, although, of course, we've seen this movie before. There's no guarantees there. That would certainly trigger some volatility if, as expected, the Supreme Court rules against the president. And as I've mentioned to you before on this show, it's going to be very important to break down exactly what that means, because while the court may say the president exceeded his authority under the International Economic Powers Act, the court will not, mark my words, Oliver, will not tell the president he's got to send back the money that's been collected on the tariffs. That just ain't going to happen. But we could see a vote that is technically, or certainly the headline news, SCOTUS votes against President Trump.
Right now, Polymarket has 26% chance Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump's tariffs. So fairly low to your point. U.S. did just score against Canada in hockey, by the way. That was not a market-related surge there. 25% Polymarket says so. It's uphill battle, it seems like, for tariffs here.
It does, but again, as I try to caution people, and regardless of how much caution and how much we try to educate traders, there will still be a knee-jerk reaction to that kind of a headline. SCOTUS votes against Trump's tariffs. But the question is, what's the ruling going to say, Oliver? And the ruling may be unfavorable technically. It may conclude that the president exceeded his authority under that Economic Powers Act, but it will not direct him to give the money back. It will not direct him that he will not be able to impose tariffs under other pieces of legislation. There's a lot of arrows in the tariff quiver, and the president knows how to use them.
Okay. I don't even know how they would collect money from tariffs. I think that so many people talk about tariffs in a way that's like not even, what are we going to track them all down? What are we, like anybody we're going to track down the person who bought a shirt at TJ Maxx that was $5 more expensive now? But I get the point, which is that, let's look at Polymarket on how they define it. The market will resolve the yes if the Supreme Court of the United States issues a decision that reverses, vacates, otherwise overturns the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit's August decision in which they held that the tariffs imposed. They've got 5 executive orders listed. So to your point, even if this comes to fruition where they rule against him, it's not like the positioning of the president or the U.S. stance is really going to change in any way in terms of the commentary or the goals or anything they're trying to do.
Well, that's true, Oliver, and even more precisely, remember, what's being evaluated is just this one piece of legislation, the IEEPA. There are at least 5 other tools in the president's toolbox using executive order pursuant to which he could impose the very same tariffs. And that's really the point here. So the Supreme Court may rule against him, and he may just simply say, oh, you don't like it under column A? Well, how about under column B? And then, of course, that will get challenged and we'll be back in front of the Supremes. And in the meantime, it'll be business as usual. And look, we saw today that continued shifting in the trade imbalance in the U.S.'s favor. The tariff policies are working in leveling that international trading playing field for international trade for the United States. There's no question.
I might inform the audience here, if they don't know, that Mr. Marc LoPresti is a lawyer.
Recovering.
Or was.
Recovering.
Is. Yeah, okay, I like those details. Good perspective. Mark, one thing that I think I definitely want to hit with you, because you put it on my radar. Obviously, you guys at Mark Rebellion are always watching options flows and kind of stock-specific activity as well. One of the main themes has been staples, the strength within the staples category, which someone actually in chat earlier said the spread between semiconductors and staples, doesn't tell us anything good, basically. I feel like that might be a little bit of an exaggeration. Why not have, because the SMH still looks pretty good. It doesn't hurt to have another group like staples doing well. And there are, I think, trades in here, like a Walmart that are 5 below or something, it's good that staples companies are doing good. That means we're consuming. We saw the consumer data. The consumer data was good in the last reading. I know Walmart's off a little bit on earnings, but it just put in highs.
Walmart's off a little bit on guidance. We know, of course, earnings season is not about what happened last quarter. It's what we expect is going to happen in the upcoming quarter. And what happened to Walmart is no different, right? They beat on the top. They beat on the bottom. Overall, continued market share. My God, 15th straight quarter of double-digit growth. Their e-commerce sector growing by 27% on a year-over-year basis. That's an unbelievable number to grow their e-commerce by that much. And the thing that was the most interesting to me were the CEO's comments that he thought that we are starting to, quote unquote, get into a normalized pricing environment, and even more interestingly, that any pressure and price increases associated with two of our favorite topics, Oliver, inflation and tariffs, had been, quote unquote, absorbed, and we're easing in terms of upward inflationary pressure. That's incredible. This is an economic bellwether. This is a company that we look to determine not only the health of the American consumer, but of the GDP in general. This was a very, very good, I think, a very, very good report in this with this earnings call. And yes, did they miss what the forward guidance? The street was looking for $2.96 a share on a forward basis. The adjusted expectation, $2.85 a share. 10 cents a share doesn't seem to be a whole lot between friends, but let's also bear in mind that this company has done incredibly well. It did incredibly well in 2025, and of course has also handily beat the S&P's performance thus far in 2026. So a little bit of foam to be taken off the top of that one on any kind of a miss on guidance. That's what we saw here. But I take the news from Walmart's earnings as overall very positive, as you put it. And don't let the haters fool you and say that health and staples must be a rotation into safety. It can also be an indication that the American consumer and the American economy is doing pretty well, because to your point, people are consuming.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Just doing a little chart work here on Walmart, maybe some kind of short-term support at 125. I could see just in this range. Nice to see implied vol dropping off post-earnings, as it generally does. So a little bit cheaper than a couple days ago, or really any time within the past week, to place a bet on Walmart now. And uptrend line that stretches for months. Mine starts in 11/25, November, okay? So That's a pretty good little 4-month uptrend there. And I do think, to your point, staples as well, that sometimes it's good to have something reliable and that is diversified from the overall market as well. Which, that chart, the staples chart, sideways, pop, Doesn't really look like anything else other than maybe energy, which brings us basically full circle to where we started this conversation.
Yep. Not surprising.
Do you buy crude, Mark? Last thought before I get Scott in here. WTI trying to make a push, gotta say.
Listen, I would say if you're looking for a serious pop, I don't know that you're necessarily going to get it, even if we wind up doing some form of additional military incursion into Iran. I think that there's just too many other factors, OPEC and otherwise. The supply-demand picture, as we've talked about when we last talked about oil, just remains and mitigates sort of heavily in favor of keeping pricing low. So I don't know that I would be betting, certainly not on this little geopolitically catalyzed upswing in crude.
Okay, all right. It's trying though. I will give it credit. Could be interesting. As generally I'm one who fades crude. I'm kind of starting to wonder maybe if I'm second guessing myself, but I generally for WTI, got to see it before my eyes. Got to see the trend really, really move if you want to get long crude. Thanks for the thoughts, Mark. Good stuff. Appreciate
Always
the
a
look
pleasure,
on
my friend.
the poly market bets as well. Nice work. Marc
you.
LoPresti, CEO of Market Rebellion.